What's up, amigos? I hope everyone is having a great time. So I started a poll last week about what you all wanted to see me do next, and it seemed like Poison Blades was the clear winner, and I get it. Everyone has been asking me to make a Poison Blade build and start driving more into the meta, and we did just that. So as always, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more daily doses of Diablo 4. And in this video, we're going to go a bit more in depth, especially over our Paragon. But first, let's go over the gear. Now, I have been reading comments across my other videos and about my builds only working with awesome gear, and this is just simply not true. You do not need to min-max, especially with poison rogues, but for majority of my builds, unless I tell you, you don't need to min-max. They will work with minimal gear, they will work as soon as you hit 50. Obviously, the power and the scaling is going to be different the better your gear is and the more you min-max. So let's start off with my helmet. Now, this is the same helmet that I've been running in most of my builds lately. It's my Poison Imbue, cooldown, health, and armor helmet with the cheats aspect. Now, the cheats aspect gives us 25% damage reduction from enemies whom are crowd controlled, and we are crowd controlling literally everything almost all of the time. Chest piece. So first off, I use Umbrus. Now, with the recent mega patch that dropped, they buffed Umbrus to give us a 60% chance to grant a free Dark Shroud stack. This procs with Puncture because Puncture is considered a marksman skill. Now, I roll 4 defensive affixes on my chest piece. If you don't want to use Umbrus and you don't want to, care about the Dark Shroud, you can use Manglers to CC cycle even more. Another thing to note is since we are running Poison, you can also look for the affix for damage reduction for poisoned enemies, just to give you a better odd at rolling more defensive affixes on your gear. Gloves, we run Edge Masters. This is a pure damage rolled gloves. It is attack speed, crit chance, +4 ranks, and dex. All stats will work here if you can't get the dex roll. For our pants, we run the might aspect, which since we run combo points and we spam puncture, this uptime on our might aspect is pretty much permanent. It gives us a 20% damage reduction for 6 seconds. I have 3 defensive affixes here, and this other one on my pair of pants, I just haven't gotten around to re-rolling it. It costs a ton of money. I need all my gold to respec most of the time, so ideally with poison rogues, you do not need this damage for 4 seconds after killing an elite. You melt everything regardless. Just roll another defensive affix on this and we're set. For boots, we run Penitent Greaves. We have crowd control freeze potential when kiting, when pushing higher nightmare dungeons, plus extra conditional additive whatever. Fist boots, easy to come across. Target farm drowned monsters. They'll drop for you pretty quick, I promise. So for my crossbow. Now, before everybody freaks out, again, my crossbow is absolutely min-maxed. And again, you do not need to min-max for this build to work. But behold my beautiful work of art. This is a dex, a double vuln, crit strike damage, core damage crossbow. Now for this crossbow, we have a perfect corruption roll. Imbuements have an 80% X increased potency. In this case, it would be just for our poison. This scales our poison pretty well. It only works against vulnerable targets, but we inflict vulnerable on everything because of exploit. Now, I don't want to be that guy, but I am going to show you the alternative aspect that you can use on your weapon. And it's on another pretty sick crossbow. But this has core damage, crit damage, damage over time, and dexterity. This is what I've been using on my Lilith attempts, and I've just recently switched over to the corruption one. But this has accelerating. Now, this is crit strikes with core skills, increase our attack speed by a massive 50%. So moving on to our amulet. Disobedience, no questions here. This aspect is 100% worth it. Extra armor is a must when you push higher nightmare dungeons. The reason you want more and more armor is because of the gap that you need to close, the diminishing return gap that you need to close with targets who are so and so levels higher than you. It is imperative that you stack as much armor and just defensives as you can when you want to push keys, and this build is great for speed clearing and pushing keys. And by keys, I mean nightmare dungeons if you haven't figured that out by now. Now, this amulet is also really good. It has +3 ranks to weapon mastery, +3 ranks to all imbuements, a massive damage reduction from close, and a % dex. You can run malice instead of weapon mastery, but I prefer weapon mastery. I do think it's the better role. So first ring is Loop of Bursting Venoms. Now, Bursting Venom, this is the most busted, broken, overpowered aspect in the entire freaking game. And honestly, I'll probably get some hate over it, but this thing, the way that it procs, is why poison builds are so insanely overpowered. I'm not saying to nerf it, but don't be surprised if they do. This thing procs so much, especially if you have extra lucky hit chance. The way that this works is when you stand in the pool of poison that it drops, you have non-stop poison imbued attacks. And that is what makes this build so crazy. And what makes Poison Rogue so crazy is that poison just infinitely stacks. It does not have a cap at all. So on this ring, I sacrificed from my old rings 4% crit chance, but to gain lucky hit chance, to again proc this more, I also gained the resource generation, which we're a Poison Rogue, we're not Shadow, we need as much resource as we can to continue spamming. Other than that, we have the crit chance, we have the crit strike damage. Ring number 2, we use Accelerating because on our weapon, we have the Corruption. If you opt to use the Accelerating on your weapon, then you put Corruption on your ring. On this ring, we have a big chunk of crit chance, vuln damage, crit strike damage, and a worthless roll of max energy. You do not want max energy. I have not found a new ring. Ideally, you want anything else, close damage, any kind of additive that you can get, you would replace it with the max energy that's on this ring. Weapon number 1, we run Blade Dancer. This is our main aspect that we need. It is what makes the blades twirl around the target. Here we have core skill, crowd controlled enemies, crit damage, and vulnerable. On your weapons, you want to make sure you have vulnerable damage. Ideally, I would replace the crowd control here with dex, but I don't have it on this weapon. I do have it on this one. This is core, crit, vuln, and dex. On this sword, you want expectant. This allows us, when we're spamming for our combo points, to stack up more multiplied damage. Hey amigos, service announcement. I'm doing a $25 Steam code giveaway. All you have to do is complete the Gleam form by following me on Twitter and Twitch to be entered. The link to the form will be in the description down below. The giveaway ends on the 21st. And service announcement is over. Thanks, and back to the video. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at our skill tree. So with most of my builds, I'm running Puncture into Fundamental. We are maxing out our Twisting Blades, of course. We run Advanced to help the cooldown of our Trap, and then our Trap helps reset our cooldown of our Imbue when Bursting Venoms is in proc. You can run Improve for the days, but that's totally up to you. 3 points in the Sturdy for close damage reduction, 3 points in the Siphoning Strikes for our Life Leech on crit. I run with Shadow Step into Methodical for the stun and of course the Unstoppable. I run Max Weapon Mastery. We use swords here, so it's 18% damage. I run 1 point into Concussive and 1 point into Trick Attacks. 1 point in the Trick Attacks. When we crit a dazed enemy, they are knocked down. And then when they are knocked down, we gain increased crit strike chance against them for 3 seconds. We take 1 point into Dark Shroud. This allows us to proc our Umbrus. This doesn't need to be on our bar. We can just keep this as is. Instead of dash, for pushing keys, I run Smoke Grenade into Enhanced Smoke Grenade. This allows enemies hit by our Smoke Grenade to take 15% increased damage, as opposed to dash, which on dash I would use for speed builds. Dash allows us just to get 15% increased crit strike damage and more of a slow and daze. We then run 3 points into Exploit, 3 points in the Malice. We run Poison Trap into Enhanced, which knocks enemies down, and then Countering to reset our imbuement skills. We max out our Poison Imbuement. We take Enhanced, and then we take Blended. Crit strikes with poison imbued skills deal 75% increased poison and damage. 2 points in the Deadly Venom, 3 points in the Debilitating Toxins for less damage, or taking less damage, sorry. 1 point into the Alchemical Advantage. We gain increased attack speed for each enemy we've poisoned. 3 points in the Precision Imbuement, increased crit strike chance with our imbued skills. 3 points into Innervation, a lucky hit chance to gain 8 energy. 1 point into Adrenaline Rush, which is more of a prereq, but it is nice just to have an extra 5% energy regen while moving. And 1 point into Haste. This is especially useful for when we're bossing and spamming. We get the increased attack speed when we're below 50% max energy. Our Keystone passive is also dependent on what you want to do. If you speed farm, I recommend Close Quarters Combat. If you are pushing keys, I recommend Momentum. There is another alternative here. You can also run Exposure. This just, again, for pushing keys. I don't recommend Momentum or Exposure if you are speed farming. Alright, so now let's go ahead and talk about the Paragon. Now the link to the build with Paragon will be in the description down below. I have taken a lot of time to really try and min-max the Paragon board, and I think I've figured out the best way to do so with the Poison Blade build here. So first board we take Prime, and we take our Skillful just for our damage increase, of course. We also take Lawless for the armor. We glyph in Closer. This will give us a massive increase to our Cutthroat abilities, and we get a 10% reduced damage. So for our first class board, we are going to be running Deadly Ambush. Now it is worth noting here that I don't have all my Paragon points. I'm not level 100, I am 95. Again, the link to the full Paragon is in the description. So we are running up to the glyph slot here. We are going to slot in Bane. This gives us a huge poison damage increase, plus our bonus of 10% chance to double the poison damage. We are going to be grabbing the legendary node here, but again, we just aren't level 100 yet. We also grab Cunning, which gives us damage reduction from enemies affected by our trap skills, and we are going to be taking Engineering and the surrounding magic nodes for a total of 35% extra damage to enemies affected by our trap skills. For our third board, we are going to be running Cheap Shot. We start off by running up to Oppress, which gives us damage and crit strike damage to crowd-controlled enemies. We then make our way to the Glyph, and we glyph in Control. Control will give us a massive amount of damage to crowd-controlled enemies as well. The bonus, that gives us 10% increased damage to slowed or chilled enemies, or doubled to 20% for damage to stunned or frozen enemies. Now we're also going to be running Devious for extra damage to crowd controlled enemies, making our way down to our fourth board. Now our fourth board is going to be Exploit Weakness, and I have learned that this is not as good as I thought that it was, so we are not going for the legendary node here, but we are going for the closest glyph slot. And we are going to be putting Combat in here so we can benefit from the crit strike damage with core skills and the bonus that we restore 12% of energy when we crit. We also opt to take the Artifice node and the surrounding magic nodes to give us an extra 25% vulnerable damage increase. Our fifth board here is Tricks of the Trade. We start off by rushing straight to the glyph slot. This is where our exploit glyph is. We are just worried about slotting in the 25 strength for the bonus. That way we have our source of mass infliction of vulnerability. We come up here, we do take Havoc for the increased crit strike damage and physical damage. We take a couple of the surrounding nodes for extra fizz and extra crit. We come down to the bottom of the glyph slot here for Lawless and the surrounding armor nodes. We do take the legendary node here. This allows our Puncture to grant our Twisting Blades 25% increased damage. We make our way down to the bottom of the board. We also grab Brawler and a couple surrounding nodes here for extra damage to close enemies, but also damage reduction to close enemies. And our sixth and final board, we are ending with No Witnesses. We don't opt to go for the legendary node here because we don't use an ultimate skill, but instead we are coming down here. We are going to be grabbing Training, coming down to our glyph, putting in Tracker, which is going to give us more poison damage, and the bonus is poison damage effects last 33% longer. And to activate the Tracker and then give us some extra, we are going to be taking Knowledge, which just gives us more percent damage. Again, all of this will be in a build link so you can see the completed board for yourselves. And that's all. Thank you so much for watching, as always, amigos, and I do think you'll enjoy this one. As usual, I'll add a Nightmare Dungeon to end this. It's a T64 Maulwood. And until next time, amigos, take care.